Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaching Heroes, the teaching podcast where I interview teachers and educators and ask them, what does it take to show up every day to teach tomorrow's leaders? And today we have a very special guest on. This guest was actually the first person I asked to be on the podcast, but because he's so incredibly busy transforming lives, he's only been able to say yes to me. So please welcome Mr. Stephen Roberts. Thank you for coming on my podcast finally.
No worries, Jojo. I call you Jojo.
You can. So
I'm trying to wrestle my own kids mainly. That's probably the main thing that's taking up all my time at the moment.
Yeah, so Steve is a assistant principal, right? Or deputy principal?
Assistant principal, yes. I've climbed up the ranks out of my school, but I was I came here as director of wellbeing, looking after the wellbeing of the staff and students. And late last year, our assistant principal moved on to bigger and better things. And so then I threw my hat in the ring and was fortunate enough to be given this opportunity to be at this amazing school and be the assistant principal to a very good boss, one of my mentors. So it's good honor to do that.
That's just an incredible journey, Steve. And I probably should stay right out here that Steve's my cousin, my first cousin. And what I've heard about Steve and the work he's done out at the school in Western Sydney has pretty much come from his mum. And because his mum brags about how amazing he is. And so I've only heard about 5% of the incredible work you do. And I know he hates me talking him up, but I just think it's great what you do. And so tell us a bit about, the context of your school. What's the kind of demographic and how do you approach leadership? What's it been like being a leader, an assistant principal for the first time too?
Yeah, definitely challenging, but rewarding all the same. And I will start from the beginning and say that my mum does embellish and, I am the golden child. So
yeah.
Too much, which I was a little concerned about. But in terms of my context, yes, it's in Western Sydney. We have a range students with come from some complex backgrounds. A lot of second generation refugee families. Big diversity in terms of our multicultural. And part of that is we have about 100 South Sudanese students that we look after who are amazing and bring their culture into the college. Students from a range of backgrounds, students from a range of complex lifestyles as well. And coming to the leadership, it was about I suppose balancing and nurturing some of that, but also providing that tough love when it needs to. And being a leader, it's tough because you make the decision on what you think's best, but might not be what the other person think is the best. But as our other cousin once told me, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. So
yeah, right.
So I believe she's going to be on your podcast in the future. That's Louise.
Yes, yeah, we'll get Louise on. I assume that's who you're talking about. Yes, yeah. Wow, that is incredible. Because I found that too. Because new leadership role for myself this year as well, and you really have to do balance on what your vision is, where the staff are, where the students are, and kind of balance that between. It can be really difficult to kind of negotiate.
Definitely the balance, but that's where it's important. Like I said at the beginning, having the mentor, my boss that I've worked with at my previous school and now here, obviously value his opinion, and there's a number of other great teachers and leaders on staff here, and you lean on them to sort of get their ideas and feedback. Important. You've got to take the feedback, as hard as it is sometimes. Yeah. But then you sort of got to filter that away as to, okay, yes, they're right. The feedback's correct. I need to change it up here, or stick to your guns and stick to what you know and believe in. Make sure you get the best outcome. And at the end of the day, and this is one of the things the boss says we're here for the kids, and it's not about the adults, it's about the students and what's best for them. And you keep that in the back of your head, what's best for the student here. And I suppose it simplifies it. It makes it a bit easier to make the decisions or the tough calls.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? And I think, yeah, for me as well, it's when I started to shift, to be honest, like, it wasn't till I shifted from thinking about myself and my progression, say in my career, and I started to think about the university and what the university needs and what the students needs. That's when actually the leadership opportunities came up for me, when I was so concerned about myself. It just, nothing was working. But when you shift that context to, okay, what does the university need? What's their vision? What's the vision of the students? And how can I bring that, to bear? And that's when the leadership opportunities came up for me.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're here to prepare the students for life outside of school. And, during our time here, the amount of students that are entering into university or secondary tertiary education has increased, but that's not the pathway for everyone. So you're still preparing them in the skills that they require. And that's the beauty of, I think, schools now. It's not just we're preparing them for uni. We're preparing them, what makes them 21st century sort of learners, and preparing them for the next step on their journey. And that, in my context, being a Catholic school, preparing them, giving them the faith formation, and making them the best person as well. So developing the person, and not just, it's not just about the school, the next part of their journey in relation to their work, but the next part of their journey in making good people, good leaders. Your podcast suggests.
Yes. And can you talk a little bit about how, because you just said you've had an increase in tertiary participation from your students, is that right?
Yeah.
And how did you make that shift? What did you implement in the school to kind of increase that participation? I mean, I hear you, it's not for everyone, right? But for those who it is for, we want to make it available to them. And how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, look, I won't take the credit for it. We've got, as I said, we've got amazing teachers.
Yeah.
We've got other amazing leaders here that I suppose get to understand the students and what they want and what they need, and create the pathway earlier. I think a lot of people are doing that, and opening the doors a lot earlier for students.
Yeah.
Which does pose a problem a little bit when we're, telling our HSC students that they need to sit down, they need to study to get the best result, to open the doors. I mean, it's a great thing, but the door's already open for them. And so create that motivation.
Oh, like the early entry programs, is that what you mean? Yeah, so they already know they're going to university, but okay.
I mean, it's a fantastic thing, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's, but it, just makes us think, how do we create the motivation and continue to drive to success. And it can be a little bit of a numbers game, which that's a whole different podcast in relation to the success of the school being judged on the number of band sixes.
So do you still get that out there in in your context as well? There's still that pressure to get band sixes?
And look, Joe, it's not it's good pressure, because you've got to have that pressure sort of to motivate and keep everyone on their toes, and make sure that we're developing the students as best they can in relation to in their subject areas. My belief, I suppose, is that it's not just it's not just one criteria success when you have a student at school. There's plenty of things that don't go on to tertiary education or taking up non-ATAR pathways. And we've developed, a good person at the end of the day, and it may have got them through, and in our context, may have got them through a particular tough period in their life. See them flourish when they're in school, and to get their high school certificate, or to go on to TAFE or to an apprenticeship. It's just that's for me is the success and the reason why.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to ask me this question, why I got into the game, but the reason, what I love about the game, it's not just the band sixes.
Yeah. Do you have an example of a student that you'd like to share with us that you see went from kind of struggling to, you know, being able to find a pathway for them?
I suppose, this is, you know, the nature of when you come AP, you don't get as much of the one-on-one as you do when you're in the classroom with the students. It's one of a bit ironic because, you know, as you sort of get better at your trade, you do less of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I suppose one of my strengths is with people. As a teacher, one of my strengths is with the people. And I suppose, in answering your question, one of the success stories I had, and might lead into a question that you're going to ask me about, is doing the wellbeing programs.
Right.
And one of the kids that I was working with is, he's left us now actually, and he emailed me the other day to say he's got an apprenticeship.
Wow.
But he went through this wellbeing program, and it was timely for him, I think. And that when he finished it, we have our sort of the final session, because we do training sessions with them, and we do it at Wanda Sandhills, and at the top of the sandhill we sort of run up there, and then we share a bit of the stories. And down, you know, he turned to me and said, "Oh, I can't thank you enough for looking after me and getting me through that period." So it's
wow.
That was very very poignant moment in teaching, and one of my success stories. But you know, there's plenty of them on different scales. But that was one of the ones that.
Yeah. God, so amazing. I'm just going to turn off my air conditioner because it's making too much noise. And then I want to ask you about the wellbeing program. So that was your first role at the current school you're at, right?
Yeah.
And so what was that, a role that already existed, or was that?
Yes, it was a role. Look, it's the old school. A lot of schools would call them partial care coordinators.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, to simplify that even again is to look after, you know, you're in charge of looking after the year coordinators, running the team in that way. But effectively, yes, director of wellbeing was looking after the wellbeing of staff and students, and in the crux of it, doing the student management.
Yeah.
Where the wellbeing programs were born is myself and another colleague. Again, another mentor, another very smart teacher that you could potentially put on this podcast.
Right, bring him on.
He has a lot to say about education, and
I
think he won Australia's favourite teacher one year. He doesn't.
Wow.
He doesn't mind telling me about that and reminding me. Well, we went to a boys' education PD over the course of 2 days, and we noticed it focused a lot about the problem. And didn't a whole lot of the solution. One thing that stood out was, you know, back in, you know, in a lot of Indigenous cultures, that rite of passage for the boys, going from, you know, childhood into manhood, and the initiation, or as I said, the rite of passage. So we kind of developed the rite of passage, if you like, at our school.
Right.
We called it the Men of Honor program.
Yeah.
And basically identified, that students had to nominate themselves, and we got the year coordinators to nominate boys in year 9 and 10. To, you know, and we didn't want to make it a bad boys club.
Yeah, right.
It was three criteria, where it was students that were sort of flying under the radar, leaders, and students that were, you know, get into a bit of trouble in the classroom, or out in and outside of the classroom. Yeah. And they applied for it, and we just sort of we made the class a little bit exclusive, so they could apply for it, but we capped it at, I think our first series, we call them, was 20. Yeah. So not everyone got in. Yeah. And we reserved the right to, you know, tell people that they're not ready for it at this point in time and during the program.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they could opt out whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
And we had a meeting with the parents and explained what we were doing, and we got them, and we focused a lot of based a lot of our wellbeing stuff on Dr. Martin Seligman's Positive Psychology, the book.
Okay.
Yeah. That for anyone to read. You know, and the concept of PERMA. So in the workshop, there was 2 workshops, or 2 sessions, I should say, a week. They would come out, and in the classroom, in the workshop, we would focus on different areas and how to be a better man, or how could we, you know, improve. And then we'd go out and we'll train with each other. And, you know, those sessions were quite tough. And we put a focus on those that made the effort, not just the ones that were at the front all the time. The effort. And, you know, a lot of my favorite trainers were the ones that were at the back, but they were busting their gut as much as the ones that were at the front. And, you know, at the end of the day, seldom you make the effort here, you can make the effort anywhere. So and then obviously we didn't want to leave the young ladies out, so we came up with a program called Thrive for the Year 9 and 10 girls, and that was eye-opening, because two male teachers sort of running the program, and we were leaned on the female teachers on staff. Share their story, and that was great. And then we'd have open conversation. It was really good. It was really eye-opener. But they were just 2 of the wellbeing.
Wow! And did the girls still have the sport element to it as well?
Yeah. So
did you have the training?
So we had workshop in, and then you know, went out and trained and did all the same type of training, and have the final hurrah at Wonder Sandhills, where you got to run up the sandhill and make it a bit tougher. So. They had all the same experience. It just what it did was it created connections between year groups. It created connections between different walks of life within the year group. You know, that normally talk to each other. They were talking to each other. More importantly, created a positive connection for some of those students that were disengaged with other students, but also with teachers. Because quite often they come into class and they're getting told what they're doing wrong all the time, as opposed to, you know, how good they were at training, or good to see, you know, those types of things. So it's been really positive, and you know, we have students coming up, because Cirque and I being it next time, so it's really created a good look. Don't get me wrong, I think they enjoy getting out of class. But you know, they've still got to do the work when they're in the
but there's something in that though, right? That they're not. I mean, I'm sure you have incredible teachers, and they're doing incredibly engaging lessons. But there is something in that though, right? That they're willing to. I can imagine those workshops would be pretty confronting for them as well. They'd be confronting a lot of things about themselves, and knowing what you're like on the sporting field, I can imagine that those training sessions aren't easy. So the fact that they're willing to just work stuff out physically and mentally, that says a lot really about what they're not getting maybe in the classroom.
That's right. I mean, they were tough sessions, you know, but I think we were doing it with them, you know, so we were modeling it with them. And it was confronting some of the sessions that we had. We just, you know, we called them their coaching sessions, you know, that we called it the sheds, and we would talk about, you know, some of the real life things that they're going through at the moment. And as I said, how can there be better men and women, you know, in today's world? And it just got people talking. And in relation to engagement, you know, one of the drivers for every school is to increase attendance. Not one student missed a session.
Wow.
So the day, oh sorry, that's a bit of a lie. That was a bit of a mum embellish. You know?
Well, I guess people are sick sometimes.
in one of the series we call them, as I said, the students were at every session, which means they're at school. You know, getting them there. You know, whereas you walk into a class and you'll notice that, you know, not every kid's in the class every lesson. So we're doing something right. We're doing something. We haven't perfected it, and I don't think we ever will. But we're doing something right.
What are some of the conversations you had about being better men and women? Like, how did you, yeah, I'm just really curious about that.
Well, look, without, without
You
being,
want to give your secrets away.
no, I'm happy to share. I mean, I'm happy to share anything, but without, being stereotypical, we had to lead the boys more in the discussion. The girls, you could sort of say, this is the topic, and they would go and they would open up, and it was very different conversations, but the theory was there in relation to PERMA, positive. I've got to remember what they are now. Positive emotions in relation to the P, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So we'd break it down. That's the PERMA in Martin's theory. So we would, design our workshops to that. The boys, as I said, we would have to talk to them a little bit more. The girls, we would sort of say, okay, this is what we're talking about. This is the reason why, and they would open up and talk. And I suppose what was surprising with the girls was how I'm going to say how nasty they were being with each other.
Wow.
And they were, open up and basically saying, that they needed to be more united with each other, and rather than the comments and the gossip and everything. And they would open up and they'll talk to each other about it and talk about what they're going through, and those knowing each other's story before, making judgment. The boys, we would talk about just, doing the little things, like the being, the motto for the men of honor is a brotherhood built on respect, courage, and pride. So we'll talk about each one of those and doing the little things to make sure that we are being better. And, whilst we make mistakes, we learn from them. But, and they would hold each other to account. So their uniform, making sure they had all the equipment, how they would talk to each other, how they would talk to the young ladies, it's, quite topical at the moment in relation to how our young men are treating our ladies. And we run a session on that, about how you speak to them, and, how you would find that. And when I say them, I don't mean to say that, how you would speak to young ladies, and how would you feel if someone was speaking to your sister or your mother or someone, how would that make you feel, and get them to think about it a little bit.
Amazing. And we've talked a little bit about, because one of the things that my students always say, it's their biggest angst is behaviour management, right? They've got this big fear, I think, that they're going to walk into a classroom and there's going to be chairs flying everywhere, and unless they get the rules right, that they need to know a plan. What's your behaviour management plan? What's your strategy? And I say to them, 2 words. I say, love them. And they laugh at me, but I'm like, but that's it. That's what it is. And I just, just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that your approach to your students then filters in through the class, like the regular classroom. Then, how does positive relationships play out in terms of impact on their academics, or how they are in relationship to the teacher?
Yeah, no, it was a question I was waiting for, Joe, because it's the one I'm, very passionate about, and I agree with you more about loving them, because, I would say teaching. I normally say 80%, but you can decide what percentage is relationships. And I kind of think if you don't like being around people, hanging out with people, then you're in the wrong game, because kids are little people, and kids are going to make the same mistake over and over again. But you got to keep coming back, and you got to go through the alphabet of strategies to find the right letter that's going to suit the right student. And there's not one size fits all. This is my belief, and I know not every educator will agree with me, but I don't feel that there's one one size fits all student management for each for every kid. So we sort of look at making connections over consequence rather than going the punitive approach at our school. We go for the relational approach and try and work through, you know, in that more restorative type way on how they can improve their behaviour. In relation to me personally, like I said, I think one of my greatest strengths, and you know, in the family that we were raised in, is getting along with others. I think once I get that connection with the student, you know, it doesn't always happen, but if I ask them to do something, it generally gets done because they don't want to let me down.
Yeah.
And I think if they're just doing it because, you know, they're going to get a consequence, or if the consequence doesn't work, then what do you do next?
Yeah, that's right.
So
because you shifted that, right? There was a lot of detention going on and you came in and changed that. Is that right?
So yeah, that basically the reason why I think I got the job initially is because the boss did see that in my skill set, is to be able to get along with everybody, and being very relational with staff and students. And one of the things that when I first got here, they had a lunch detention every day, and the students that were doing the wrong thing would get sent to the room, and they would have to sit in the room with the person in my position, you know, for doing the wrong thing. And he was very happy to get rid of that quickly because I want you out and about, and I want you to be with the students.
It's so counterintuitive that it frustrates me that, you know, taking recess time away or lunch time away, you know, form of behavior management, because it's like, it's just setting you both up. You want them to run out, get it out of their system, like have something to eat, be with their friends. Like that's, you know, taking their lunch away is just going to make the situation worse for you in the afternoon.
Yeah. And that's just working through with it, with the student. And then sometimes with the student and the parent. I mean, again, another person I think you're looking to get on is my brother Paul. One of the greatest bits of advice when I first started teaching was don't take your problems elsewhere. And I mean, I'm not downplaying that, you know, different staff members have a different connection with students, and you lean on your colleagues. I understand the place, but I suppose one of the big shifts that we've made here was one of the student management policies was, you know, to email the leader of learning or the leader of wellbeing. We call them here year coordinator or KLA coordinator, and that was the student manager. That was how they solved the problem. You know, they're not. You know, and when I say that, that's, you know, it's a general statement. You know. But rather than taking control and working through with a student, because at the end of the day, they're coming back into that classroom, and you're the person in front of them. So if you have that mutual understanding and mutual respect, then I think when you ask them to do something, kids aren't always going to do it, no matter how much. And that can be frustrating. I get frustrated, and I can still raise my voice. I try not to, but especially when you do so much for them, they
that's right.
Can't connect the dots sometimes. But you know, one of the things the boss says is teachers don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I really believe in that too. Is you know, I'm teaching my maths class now, and my year 9 maths class, and you know, these kids they're in the bottom year 9 maths class, and they say, oh, I'm not good at maths, or I hate maths, but they're rocking up to my class, and you know, come in, and I'm self-gloating here. I'm doing mum's job.
Do it. We do it.
They love coming to the maths, you know, because you know, I like having fun. You know. You know, I'm in my workplace, but we can have fun and we can learn. That's what I say. There's no problem with having fun in learning.
Well, I say that to my students. I said, if you're not enjoying teaching your lesson plan, then the kids aren't enjoying learning it. So come up with something that you enjoy.
That's right. And you know, on the back of that, Joe, I'll say, you know, you're going to have those lessons where both you and the students aren't enjoying it. That's natural. That's normal. But you're there for them. You're going to be with them day in, day out. So you've got to create that connection, and you've got to create that understanding of this is you're doing it for me. We're doing it with each other. I'm not out to get you. I suppose
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm not here to get you. I'm here to help you. That's,
Yeah.
I'm here to help with your learning. That's
Yeah.
all. I mean, and that's what we say when you go into a parent meeting. It's like, I'm not trying to make things difficult. I'm not trying to get them in trouble. I'm trying to help them. It's just sometimes make it a bit tougher, but you got to work.
So, Steve, it was like really interesting when you went into teaching, because your mum has this great story where she says you hated school every single day, and even she drove you to school, year 12, last day, and she said, "Oh, last day, you must be happy to go." And you turned to her and said, "Mum, if I could stay home, I would." And yet not a couple of years later, you decided to go back in the classroom permanently. What's going on there? Tell us your story.
I think it's the family business, really. No,
yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah, I mean, I can empathise with the students. I went to. I don't think that was any secret. I went to school for recess, lunch, and sport.
Yeah.
But
my son's the same. Yeah.
No, look. Part of it is, I mean, I was growing up in the family, as I said, we've already commented on one brother got, on the
my saying is like, throw a stone at a Catholic school and you'll hit one of my cousins.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. And so it was always a profession I looked at. It was either going to be Year 10, it was either going to be, PE teacher or landscape gardener. It turned out I started doing plumbing when I first finished school, and then no, I got the mark to get in, and at uni, and I thought I'll give it a go.
Okay.
I love my uni days. I love obviously the freedom of that. And then just really enjoyed it in being in the classroom and dealing with, like I said, dealing with the students and having those rewarding experience. Don't get me wrong, I still look forward to the holidays, and I still look forward to going home and the weekends.
Yes.
But I suppose the family led me in there, but I'm happy to be in here, and I mean it has its tough days, but
and you talk about knowing what it was like for you as a student and remembering that in your teaching. So as a student, what were some of the struggles you had that you then that's kind of helped you become a better teacher, really, or led you to kind of make your practice as best you can, because you didn't always have the best experience?
I think I suppose learning, it's fair to say, fair to say learning didn't come naturally, and maybe because I wasn't interested, probably didn't come naturally is the wrong way, I'll in a second, but I was just more interested in other things, I was more interested in throwing the footy out the front, or kicking a ball, as opposed to being seated in the one spot for an hour. And Mum used to worry. She tells me she used to worry because I wouldn't pick up things, real quick. Some would argue I still don't. But Dad was the one that sort of pointed out that I could quote movies left, right, and center, and I could sing the lyrics to every song. So he said there's no problem with his learning. He can pick up things. It's just that he's not interested in it. And I suppose I use that analogy when I'm in the classroom and talking to different teachers, is that's why you got to have them engaged, because a lot of the students, it's not so much that they can't, it's just that they're not interested. But Joe, it's like I said, I take that, all those learn, take that feeling that I had when I was at school and remember it. I suppose it's, when you said when you tell your students they're going to walk into day one and you want their students sitting down, I heard in another episode that a quiet classroom doesn't mean that they're engaged, and I couldn't agree more. Like, they're just sitting there. These days they could be sitting there and they've got the phone between their legs and they're watching something, Snapchat or whatever it might be. So a noisy classroom is not necessarily a bad thing, but I can't sit there for 10 minutes and
Yeah.
concentrate. And one thing I remind the staff, you know, and I had this conversation with one of the leaders just then was, you know, as teachers, we sort of tell our students, put our device away or stop talking, you know, make sure you're at class on time and everything like that. And then you go into a meeting and there's laptops up and they're checking phones. And I just sort of think, oh, well, what's good for the goose is, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in another, you know, last week's episode, I talked with my health and my diet coach about that as well, you know, that we as teachers, like 2/3 of adults are overweight and obese. That means 2/3 of teachers are overweight, a third of them would be obese. And we're in there talking to them about nutrition and being responsible and, you know, being an adult. And yet, you know, we're drinking too much, eating too much. We're not being responsible. So there's a kind of mismatch there.
Yeah. I just think that's just got to be remembered. I mean, it's, you know, we're not going to wave a magic wand and the students are going to be sitting down. They're going to be doing all the right things all the time. And neither are we. And that's
true. Yeah.
You know, as I said, we've got to enjoy it. But I suppose, I think it's just you got to remember where you're at and where you're at when you're sitting at professional learning course, or if you're sitting in, you know, not your lecture, Dr. Joe, I'm sure your lectures are, you know, engaged student wouldn't, or they wouldn't look, you know, or wouldn't talk to the person next to them. I think it's just, you've got to remember, we can't set an expectation that we set an expectation that we can't even meet. Our students aren't going to be able to meet it. And I'm not saying to lower the bar. We just have to, that's where the working with each other comes in.
Yeah, and it's about being real. Like I share that with my students now, or struggles I've had, you know, quite open about how anxiety, you know, stopped me from, you know, being the best teacher I wanted to be, and how you have to kind of grow up and be responsible, and, you know, you make mistakes, definitely, and you say sorry. And but if you are authentic like that as a teacher, then the students are more likely to kind of share with you what's going on with them as well. And then you can kind of, make inroads into, you know, both of you behaving, you know, as the human that you want to be.
That's right. Yeah. You got to be a little bit vulnerable to the students as well. Share your story, obviously, you know, within reason, within limits. You know, you don't share your personal life. I'm not saying that. That they have to see that you're human. You know, you're not just a teacher. You're a human, and you make mistakes, and you can be vulnerable, and you did it tough, and but you know, that's where the working with each other and the understanding each other is crucial. That's the first thing, is know the students. You know, I know the first ATSL stands is know the students, know how to learn. The first part is know the students, and you got to know how to learn. You got to know all about them, what's going to make them tick, how you're going to get the best out of them, not just in their learning, but in their relationship with others. You know, and that might be by going gentle, and you know, ignore and you say hello, but you play it how it comes. I think it's very, very crucial to show that understanding and be real, like you said.
Just last question for you, Steve. I really wanted, because you're not only a world-class teacher, but you're a world-class coach and touch football player. And I wanted to know how much you bring that coaching into, you know, or what you've learned from coaching young people, and how you brought that into teaching, or vice versa.
Yeah, well, like we said, sport was probably the more natural attraction, more the thing that came more natural to me, and being within amongst sporting teams and different personalities. Everything that I do, I kind of relate it to sport, and how I do how I would do it as a perform as a coach, and vice versa. I mean, I brought a lot of my teaching experience into how I would coach a team. So touching on what you said, I did play at a higher level with touch football, and then I was given the opportunity to coach an international Japanese touch team.
Amazing.
And that was an amazing experience. And just remember that you're having break everything down and create that connection. But everything, everything that I do and I've learned has a lot of it has come from sport and in the sporting context. And I know, you sort of, it's the same. It's that transfer of skill, to and from the school context and the sporting context. But yeah.
There's something in that one-on-one relationship though with coaching, like I had, that I've kind of been present to in the last year, that there's something different about coaching where there's like a, go in hard and love you up kind of like,
yeah.
It's like, setting really high expectations for you and just, getting you there. I don't know, there's something there that I'm really curious about. And I kind of hear that in what you're saying, is that you have these high expectations for students, but you're providing them with this kind of supportive context.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You've got to give, as a coach, you have to give the feedback, and sometimes the feedback is not always nice. And different members of the team respond differently to the feedback. So, and it could have an impact on their performance in the team. So I went at a player and said that was terrible. You did that, you did this, and pointed out all the mistakes.
Yeah.
The next time they're probably going to go try too hard or be too scared to make the same mistakes.
Yeah, right.
Or go with the, you're doing this well, you need to improve.
Yeah. On
X, Y, and Z. Or some athletes, respond to that negative motivation.
Yeah.
That's again, the classroom is the differentiation, how you're going to approach.
Yeah.
But I would say as a coach, and especially at a coach at elite level, and this is where we're doing a growth coaching courses and putting our staff through the growth coaching course here at my school.
That's great.
Because, it's about guiding the athlete or guiding the student to where they want to go, and not sort of telling them how to get there the whole time. At the international level, they've got the skill set. I'm sort of the pieces of the puzzle together for them, and working with them and to build I suppose that cohesion, but also how they can utilize that skill within the team. A lot of the time, our students these days have got access to YouTube and Google, and but we've got to guide them in the way that how to get there might look a little bit differently now. So they've got to provide that.
Yeah, information's cheap now, right? So it's kind of providing that more ontological, like self-discovery type of learning for students is going to have the more impact.
Yeah. But going back to one thing that I forgot to say in the wellbeing programs, and you touched it with your coach in relation to your training, is being in that right mindset from the beginning. Like, we can't go into the classroom thinking that everyone's ready to go, ready to rock. Everyone's starting at different. The start line's not the same for everyone. And that's why wellbeing and positive psychology, I think, is so important, is to sort of trying to balance the playing field. Because there's no point, you might have the greatest lesson in the history of teaching that's going to provide engagement, but if the student's not in the right headspace, it's not going to matter. Yeah. So we've got to look after all facets of the health, and especially in the mindset of the students, and make sure they are ready to learn.
And that's so complex too. Like I keep going back to that moment where I decided to really do something about my weight. And I'm like, I don't know why, I don't know what it was that made me finally, switch to it. And, I guess it was finding the right program too for me, but it's a complex thing. And as you say, I think you said that so well, like they're not all ready to go at the start line, and it's kind of creating that environment where to get them there, and then, okay, maybe we can push them a bit further.
That's right.
But yeah, they're not all going to be ready when we want them to be.
That's right. And a lot of that, it comes back to comfort zone, I would say, too.
Yeah.
It's like you probably didn't want to get into that training because it was like, oh, I'm not sure about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's, how am I going to feel? People going to judge me? They have a feeling when they walk into the classroom to learn. Like to feel comfortable to be able to get it wrong. That's what I encourage, is that you get out of your comfort zone and create that environment in the classroom where the mistakes are a good thing. The mistakes is what you want. And the more that you do it, the more confidence, the more success you can see. And you notice that with your own training, the more you just sort of, you got a thirst for it, and you wanted to, want to be, and then that had that, that had the ripple effect on everything else that you're doing. I'm sure that you would have said, you can say yourself that you're a lot happier with what you're doing, and made a massive impact. And I think that, if you set out and you just take small steps, then it's going to have a massive impact.
Yeah, and it does. And it's something, to think about with students. If they can get that, they can achieve their goals in one area, it does have that impact on the wider, it does have an impact on the other things. And that's what it was like for me. Once I saw how powerful I was at keeping my word and keeping to my diet and, just doing everything I was told I did. And then I was like, wow, if I applied that to other areas of my life, what's the impact going to be? And so, and then the outcome was success. And, there's still struggles and things I come up against, but at least that I have that, well, I've overcome a big challenge before, we can create those environments for our students.
That's right. I mean, and that's what's the measure of success. JJ was like, you may have set the goal and may have just fallen short, but you're a long way ahead of where you first started.
Yeah.
And so it's just the little things, the little things that add up. And that's one of my things I like to say constantly to the students. It's the one percenters 100% of the time. You constantly do the little things, and the big things will take care of themselves.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to end it there. Steve, we could talk to you forever. I think we need another episode with you on.
Thanks, Dr. JJ.
I love it. Everyone's going to see me now as like a little kid. That's okay. Thanks so much for coming on, Steve. I really appreciate it. And, your mum undersold you, I reckon. I reckon you do even more than what she told me you did, don't you?
I love it. We're all little kids, JJ.
Yes, that's what makes us good teachers, I think. Thank you. Bye. See you all next week.